Hey everybody, this is Rykard here again, and welcome to another narrated Pokemon Wi-Fi battle. Today's battle is against an opponent by the name of Rykard, who is someone I met on the Smogon forums, and when I sent the challenge, he told me he didn't really have a specific tier that he wanted, but he did bring a team that consists of some OU Pokemon and some other tiered Pokemon, so I decided to kind of do the same thing by bringing 3 OU Pokemon and 3 underused Pokemon to kind of make it fair in terms of the tiers of Pokemon we brought. But I'm using a pretty weird mix of guys. You'll kind of see how it works throughout the battle. But one thing I was not expecting is for my opponent to be using a Sun team, which I was definitely not entirely prepared for when I put this team together, because I didn't really expect it to happen, but I should always kind of be prepared for things like that, I guess. My opponent is also using the combination of Slacking and Cofagrigus, which is something I will have to be looking out for throughout the battle, because I definitely do not want Slacking getting rid of its Truant ability. And he also brought a Feraligatr, which I thought was very interesting to bring on a Sun team, but it kind of works out for him either way anyway. But with that, let's just jump into it right now. So to start things off, I lead off with my Metagross, as my opponent leads off with his Ninetales. Now obviously being afraid of the fire move, especially since it's sun boosted because of its drought ability, and also recognizing right now that he is the air balloon, so I can't even hit it with an earthquake, I do have to switch out right away. I decided to go into my Flygon to take the Fire Blast. I knew it was going to do a ton of damage, but I would still resist it to live at least 1, and then U-turn out in the following turn to at least break the air balloon. Luckily for me though, he does miss a Fire Blast, but now, predicting another one to happen, I decided to switch out into my Vaporeon, as he unfortunately puts me to sleep with Hypnosis. Now I am just kind of desperate to wake up, because once Vaporeon was put to sleep, I recognized that it was probably not going to be even remotely useful for the rest of the battle. So I'm just trying to mash on Protect right here to hopefully wake up. Not that mashing on a move will make it wake up faster, but either way, I know I can at least take 2 Solar Beams, which is good, just to show how specially defensive Vaporeon is. But unfortunately, even though I can be asleep for 3 turns, I don't wake up, which really sucks because I'm going to lose my Vaporeon right now, which was probably one of the main things to be resisting this Ninetales, because this thing is going to prove to be a huge problem to my entire team. But either way, knowing that I have the perfect opportunity to switch out into Flygon right now, decide to scare it out, go for the Earthquake. I didn't want to U-turn and predict the switch just yet because I wanted to get damage on that Ninetales, but he brings in his Feraligatr, which takes that pretty nicely, does about 30%, but I'm able to easily bring in my Hitmontop in the following turn as he goes for the Dragon Dance or the Ice Punch. I wasn't really sure. Either way, I knew Hitmontop would be able to take it very well because of the Intimidate. But not really expecting him to go into Cofagrigus right now. Going for the high jump kick, of course, he brings it in, it's immune to it, so it misses and I lose half my health, which really sucks. But still having the Toxic to deal with this Cofagrigus, I go for that right now as he switches out into his Ninetales. But again, I have nothing to switch in on this Ninetales other than my Flygon, and as you're going to see in a second, once I do switch into my Flygon, I can't even take 2 Fire Blasts from this thing because of the sun being up. So that really sucks because I basically have to try and kill this Ninetales very quickly before it does incredible amounts of damage to my entire team. But knowing that he's going to switch this time, I decided to go for the U-turn, catch this Venusaur to do a little bit of damage to it, which is going to help and add up later in the battle, and then U-turn out into my Ambipom as I go for the Fake Out. Everything on my team is slower than Venusaur in the sun, so I have to find ways through priority and other means to get damage on this thing. But predicting a Solar Beam, I switch out into my Metagross. He goes for the Growth though, which scared the crap out of me because if he had Hidden Power Fire or Earthquake, he would have went for it. I still could have lived, but it still would have done a ton of damage. But I decided to go for the Meteor Mash right there as he brings in his Fortress to take that. But him switching out his Venusaur kind of reveals to me it doesn't really have anything to hit my Metagross. But luckily for me, I have Hidden Power Fire on this Metagross to deal with Pokemon like Fortress. Unfortunately though, even in the sun, this Fortress still lives this Hidden Power Fire, which I was very impressed by. But either way, knowing that anything is going to kill it now, I decided to go for Earthquake, kind of predicting the Ninetales to come in to resist the Hidden Power Fire. Unfortunately though, I still don't do enough damage to take this thing out, so this Metagross is just coming just short of KOs multiple times so far in this battle. But because I don't want anything else to take the Fire Blast, I decided to sacrifice my Flygon at this point. I really didn't really see much of a need for it for the rest of the battle once this Ninetales went down, so trading Pokemon one for the other seemed like a good idea at that point. But since we now doubled down, I figured going into Ambipom to get off a Fake Out on whatever he brings in would be a great option. As he brings in the Venusaur, I could have just went for U-turn right there, predicting the switch into Cofagrigus, but I didn't want to pass up any damage on the Venusaur that I could have gotten. But knowing that he's probably going to go for the Will-O-Wisp right here, I decided to go out into my Jolteon to take it because obviously I'm a special attacker, so I won't mind it. I also have leftovers, so it won't really matter that much either. But unfortunately for me, he actually misses this Will-O-Wisp, which is going to prove to be really sucky in a couple of turns when I go for the Shadow Ball on this Cofagrigus, obviously scaring that out with that. He brings in his Fortress to take the Shadow Ball and his die to bring in an appropriate switch in, which is going to be this Venusaur. Now, if I was burned, I wouldn't have got put to sleep right here, which would have been amazing. But unfortunately, my Jolteon goes to sleep, which is now the second evolution on my team to get put to sleep for the battle, which is kind of unique. But knowing that my Metagross scared this Venusaur out before, I figured I'm safe to just go into it right now as he goes for the Sludge Bomb. Now, obviously, being a Steel type, I am immune to that, and I've seen Sludge Bomb, Growth, and Sleep Powder, meaning that his last move probably is Solar Beam, meaning that he probably cannot even touch this Metagross at all. So I'm going to try to keep this thing around as long as possible to deal with this Venusaur. But I decided to just go for the Meteor Mash, kind of predicting him to switch out, knowing I have Hidden Power Fire. Only does a little bit of damage to this Cofagrigus, but I bring in my Jolteon now to dodge the Will-O-Wisp because I am asleep, and get off some Leftovers recovery, which is going to be nice for this thing. But I am pretty much just intent on this thing waking up right now because I need this Jolteon. So I'm going to stay in. He goes for Psychic, which I initially thought was predicting a switch into something else, but either way, he reveals to me later that he doesn't have Shadow Ball, which I thought was kind of odd. But either way, I'm just kind of mashing on Shadow Ball right here to try and get this Cofagrigus, but unfortunately I still don't wake up as he switches out into Venusaur, and now I'm trying to click on Hidden Power Ice to catch this Venusaur. Unfortunately, that switches out into Feraligatr, predicting the Hidden Power Ice, so I guess my opponent is just kind of predicting a switch right here, and now I'm kind of clicking on Volt Switch to get this Feraligatr. Finally, I wake up, because that was like the longest sleep ever, as he switches into his Slacking. Now, I do get a crit right here, which doesn't really matter later in the battle, as you're going to see, but either way, I'm just happy for my Jolteon to be finally awake, as I Volt Switch out into my Hitmontop, because that's obviously going to get an Intimidate off on this thing, and I could also potentially threaten it out with a high jump kick. But seeing as he switched into Cofagrigus before, I figured this was now the perfect opportunity to predict that switch and go for a Toxic on this Cofagrigus, which is going to be incredibly useful for me, because most of the Pokemon on my team, as you've seen so far, are actually physical attackers. The only other special attacker was Vaporeon, and that's now dead, and Cofagrigus walls the crap out of every physical attacker. So I decided, I'm really happy that I got the Toxic off, but I decided to actually switch out into my Metagross to take the Will-O-Wisp this time, because if I'm burned, I can't be put to sleep by Venusaur, meaning that I completely wall that thing. And also, I wanted my Hitmontop to not be burned because I do pack Sucker Punch, so I wanted the priority to be as strong as possible in case I need to use that against Venusaur later. But either way, I set up my Stealth Rock right now, which is really key. That's going to prove to be very important later in the battle, as you're going to see, even though it's kind of mid-game already, but I needed those entry hazards up because we were both switching around a lot in this battle. But either way, now kind of figuring that Hidden Power Fire is going to be my strongest move since I'm burned and the sun is up, I go for that as he switches out into his Feraligatr. Still doesn't do anything to this guy, and knowing that Hitmontop was a great switch into it before, I figured I would just go right back out into that this time again, get off the Intimidate, and pretty much be able to take any physical move that this Feraligatr wants to throw at me. I know that he can't go for any water moves because of the sun being up, but he decides to go for Brick Break right there. It does some decent damage, and then me also semi-predicting the Cofagrigus to come in this time, I go for another Toxic. I figured it didn't matter either way, but I get off a Toxic on this Feraligatr, and then still not wanting to risk going for a high jump kick, I just go for Sucker Punch right here, let my Hitmontop die. Still does absolutely nothing in this Feraligatr. This must be some like ridiculously bulky Feraligatr Dragon Dance variant. But either way, with this thing at this low HP, I know that he probably doesn't have Aqua Jet because he has Dragon Dance, so I'm pretty safe in just leaving my Jolteon in right here, go for the Shadow Ball to take it out. I don't want to Volt Switch at this point because I want this Jolteon to be in, because I can pretty much bring in an appropriate counter to whatever he has at this point in the battle. But seeing as he brought in the Slacking and knowing that this isn't Scarfed because I saw Leftovers on it before, I decided to go for the Volt Switch, which is going to be great because I can Volt Switch right out into my Metagross, which is going to be able to take any physical hit from this thing extremely well, even though Slacking is super powered in every sense of the word because of its massive attack stat. But this Metagross is actually mostly defensively EV'd. But knowing that he has the Truant turn right here, I know he was going to go out into Cofagrigus, so I decided to switch out into my Jolteon right here, threaten it out with Shadow Ball, and knowing that he was going to switch out because of the Shadow Ball, I kind of just went for the Hidden Power Ice right here, hoping I would catch the Venusaur. And luckily for me, I do on the following turn, which turns out to be possibly the most key play of the game, because I bring this thing down into such a low range of health where if he switches this in at any other point in the battle, it's going to die to Stealth Rock. But because I still have the solid counter to Venusaur in the form of Metagross, I'm going to go into that right now. It's going to be able to take a Sludge Bomb, obviously. It's going to be able to take a Solar Beam, or if he goes for that and kills me anyway, I can just bring in my Ambipom to fake out the Venusaur for the KO. But he actually shows me here that he is Life Orbed, so if there is any doubt in my mind as he kills my Metagross that this thing would live a second Stealth Rock switch in, now that is completely gone. I know this Venusaur is now dead. I'm going to scare him out with Fake Out as he switches out, though, preserving this Venusaur, I guess, for Death Fodder later. He goes out in his Cofagrigus to take the Fake Out, obviously, but seeing as what he has left now, which is the Cofagrigus at pretty low health and also poisoned, his Slacking, which is at a pretty low health, and also his Venusaur, which is going to die upon entry, I can just leave Ambipom in here. I have no reason to really switch out into Jolteon at this point, so I just leave it in here. I go for double hit because I can't hit him, but either way, he's going to die eventually from poison, and honestly, that's great for me. I'd rather this thing at a very low range of health where pretty much anything is going to kill it versus my Ambipom being alive, because at this point I just need Jolteon to come in and take out the rest of his Pokemon. But I decided to U-turn here just to kind of speed things up. I know I can live a Psychic from past experience from my Jolteon taking it before. It only did about maybe like 35-40%, so I do take that rather nicely right here, as you see, as it takes some also extra entry hazard damage is what I meant to say as I fumbled over my words, but knowing that he's at just an extremely low range of health right here, I can just go for the Shadow Ball, take it out, no problem. And then as he brings in his Slacking, as this Cofagrigus goes down, I decided to go for the Volt Switch, because even if I didn't kill, he would have his Truant turn, and then I would just bring Jolteon right back in as he takes out my Ambipom, and then kill the Slacking. But fortunately for me, it just kills to kind of speed things up, and then all he has left right now is his Venusaur, which is going to die upon entry as I bring in my Ambipom one last time after the Volt Switch, giving me the victory in this battle. But that is pretty much it for this video, everyone, so thank you all for watching. This was possibly one of the most epic battles that I've had in a really long time, and it was very cool to kind of bring a mix of OU and UU Pokemon, especially ones that I've never used together on a team before. As I said, I just kind of pulled these guys from my boxes, thought they might work well together, and wanted to see what would happen. But either way, thank you again for this battle, and as always, everybody, take care, goodbye, and I will see you all next time.